Heavenly Father, we want to thank you, first of all, for bringing us here. There's not a coincidence. There was a purpose behind it. Allow us to be changed by you and to be able to grasp what's going to help us in our local context. In Jesus' name, amen. Yesterday, let's just give you a little review. Yesterday, we had one major point, which is the paradigm shift that evangelism has taken place in the last 8 years. And we said there were 3 models of evangelism. By the way, all of them still work in some sense, but you want to do what works the most effective to the most people possible. And we said that in the 1950s, the model, and some of you were here yesterday, what was the model? You start with who's your target group? An unchurched person. An unchurched person has memory of the gospel, has some religious background. And to reach that person, you start with, what were the 3 C's? You start with Christ, then community. You bring them into community, and then cause. And in the 1990s, 80s and 90s, it shifted, and now we still start with an unchurched person, but we change the order of the words. You first start with community, and then Christ, and then cause. But I said that over the last 10 years, there's been a rise. Who rose? The nuns, people that say they have no religion. They went from like 5% to now 28%. That's almost 1 in 3 people in North America. And the way to reach the nuns is to start with a cause, and then we bring them into community, and then we present to them Christ. And we said that there were 5 H's, right? There were 5 H's that every community has. And that's a good starting point if you want to get involved and do this cause, Community Christ model. You have to understand these 5 H's that exist in your communities. What were the 5 H's? Hunger was one. Homelessness was another. Health was another. Human trafficking was another. And just general help. People just need help. And at the end of our meeting, one of our attendees noticed that all of them can be summarized in 1 H, which is hurting, right? People hurt in different ways, and that's what we're trying to do. So today, I want to give you some more perspective, and we're going to do an exercise. You're going to do an exercise, and for the introverts, doing an exercise in small groups is the worst thing I could possibly say. You're thinking about leaving right now, but it's raining, so you're stuck here, right? And for the extroverts, it's like, I get to talk, yes, right? But we're not going to get there yet. We get to listen and take notes. If you want this information, I wrote a book, 2 books actually, called Everyone Welcome. It has the ABCs, like $5. And Season of Service. So just go ask for my 2 books. Is that you can get both of them for like $10. It's a deal. The first thing you have to do as a leader and as a member of Christ Church is that you have to be a reality recognizer. Things are not as I wish they were. There is a phrase that goes like this: what is. I wish when I looked in the mirror I had more hair. But what is. I wish, right, I was 10 pounds lighter. But what is. The first step to any meaningful progress is for you to be a reality recognizer. The first step, if you ever are familiar with Alcoholics Anonymous, the first step of the 12-step program is what? I have a problem. This is reality. And I sometimes worry that we believe nostalgia is a church growth strategy. Yearning for the days of old and how it used to be and the things we used to do. But what is, this is a fact. As you look at the screen, you will see 4 generations. There's actually 5 now. It's the Generation Z. Now, I'm going to talk about generations tomorrow in more detail. But just as an introduction, let's look at the screen. And you will see certain things that jump out at you. For example, we start with the elders, bottom right. The elders are people born 1945 or earlier. Who is in that generation here? So if you are an elder, what percentage of your generation does not attend church? If you look at the screen, can you see that number? 28%, right? Don't attend church. If you're a boomer between 46 and 64, who was born in those years, 46 and 64? What percentage do not attend church? 35. If you are a buster, sometimes they call them Gen X, 1965 to 1983, that's my generation. Who's in my generation here? What's the percentage? 40. Right? You see a little icon on top of the 40%. That's a little cassette tape. Remember cassette tapes? Mm-hmm. If you put a cassette tape and a pencil next to it, you know what it is. But this new generation has no idea what cassette tape and a pencil. Mm-hmm. And the next to last generation are mosaics or millennials, born 1984, 2002. Do we have any in the room? Okay, we have one. In that generation is 48% that do not attend church. And the newest generation is called, and I'm going to talk about them tomorrow in more detail, Generation Z. Generation Z are right now in the second year of college. Generation Z, the percentage of them not attending is closer to 60. So what does it tell you? What does it tell you right off the bat? What are these things right here on the screen, this cold statistics? What's the most important thing they tell you? The younger you are, the less you go to church. Right? That doesn't mean that they don't believe in God, but they're not connected to a local congregation. Those are facts. So one thing to ask yourself when you're trying to create an atmosphere where everybody feels welcome and you're trying to grow your church, you have to ask yourself, what year is it here? Like, what year is it in your church? What year is it in your church? If somebody were to walk in off the street, what year would he say or would she say that it is? So here's a quote. I know you can't read it, but I'll read it to you. It's a book called Churchless. And it says the following thing. It is not only the efficacy of personal invitations that is changing. Barna is a research company, right? They have no axe to grind. They just report facts. Barna's tracking data, stretching back to 1990s, reveal a slow-growing calcification or hardening of the unchurched towards churches. While the churchless continue to show some openness to high-touch relational connections, pastoral home visits, a phone call, a survey, they are also increasingly resistant to other forms of outreach. We discover declines for virtually every type of advertising, including what? TV, radio, newspaper, direct mailings, and billboard ads. Right? It's interesting that, once again, I know it's small, you can't read it, but above and beyond the most effective way of somebody to come to faith in Christ is through a friend or a relative. Friend or relative. The problem is, within 5 years that a person is baptized, unless they are strategic and intentional about it, they would have lost all their non-Christian friends. Right? We go to events with other Christians, we read Christian materials, we go to church with Christians, we go out with Christians, we do stuff with Christians. It's our circles. So we are talking in an echo chamber. This is a picture of how evangelism used to be. I'm an evangelist, and I am an evangelist. I'm an evangelist, and I'm an evangelist son. When I was a kid, I was responsible to change the slides for my dad, who used a projector that you had to put the little slides. Anybody remember those things, right? And my dad used to give me dirty looks when I used to put one on the opposite side. So it was. And I remember just putting up a tent. And when I was growing up, there was 3 channels on TV. There was no remote control. My dad's hand was a remote control. Where he'd be like, change the channel. That was, and we would go and put this movie in the middle of town, and people will come in droves to an event because that is what was happening. Today it looks more like this, right? You send out flyers in the mail, and usually a good number of responses is one, like a huge, excellent, fantastic number is 1 per 1,000. The average is half per 1,000, right? So somewhere along the way, we started to think that evangelism is something that somebody in a polyester suit does, and that's something that the mailman does our job, right? Because he delivers the flyers. So if you're fishing here, evangelism has always been hard, but it used to be easier. Like those are carp, right? You know that if you just ride the boat with a carp, all right, they jump in the boat. And this is what's happening in Africa and in America. And you just, we go on evangelism to Cuba, baptize 800 people. And Africa, baptize Rwanda, they baptized 100,000 people in a crusade last year. 100,000, right? You're trying so hard to get 2 people to come to your church. And so you have to ask yourself, is the problem where we're fishing at? Or is the problem that we're fishing. So Jesus said that we should share the gospel. So the fishing is a mandate. So the problem is, where is the fish? One, we can lament the fact that there are very few fish left, or we can do something about it. 30 years ago, the most effective form of evangelism was widely believed to be a straight-out, in-your-face, confront the sinner declaration of salvation available to Christ. A decade or two ago, evangelism shifted to a focus on personal relationships cultivated with eternity in mind. We believe we're undergoing another shift today wherein doing good in the world, you read that with me? Doing good in the world is a what? It's a powerful apologetic to those who are seeking God. Doing good in the world. This is what we talked about yesterday. Remember this? Nuns cause Christ community. So, here's a couple of principles. In the 5 H's, we're going to do a little activity with this in a while. But let me illustrate this in a way that I hope that you can grasp and understand. So you understand the culture that we're trying to reach. When I lived in Oregon, I flew from Oregon, Northwest and United. And then they merged and there was United. I flew United because it was convenient for me and it had low fares from Portland, Oregon to wherever I was flying. But I moved from Portland to Atlanta, Georgia. I moved. And when I moved from Portland to Atlanta, Georgia, I noticed something about United, that every time I flew from United from Atlanta, Georgia, you had to stop in Charlotte because that's like the hub. And why would I want to stop in Charlotte on purpose, right? It's like a 45-minute flight to then go where you're going. I'm like, how can we go straight from Atlanta, other places? So I started researching other avenues and airlines that could help me get to where I wanted to go faster. And I started doing 3 things, right? Started doing 3 things. Number 1, I did research on my own in the internet. I looked at different airlines. I looked at their frequent flyer plans. I looked at their levels, diamond and gold and what they offered and the benefits. I did research on my own. Number 2, I asked my friends who flew what their experience was with the different airlines. And number 3, I personally got on an airplane, and Delta was one of the ones that interested me, and I got in a Delta, and I tried to ascertain whether that experience would be good for me, right? So 3 things. First one, personal research on the internet. Number 2, I asked my friends. Number 3, I went to experience it myself, in that order. Now, I received a flyer in the mail from Delta inviting me to join their Sky Miles program. And I was very interested in that flyer because it gave me some other information I did not have. So finally, I changed from United to Delta. And I have been Delta ever since. I really enjoy it. They do right by me, and there's always bad experiences in every airline, but the majority of experiences are positive. So I switched from United to Delta. Following me so far? All right. So when I received the Delta flyer, what is the presupposition that Delta has as they send me a flyer? What is it something that they presuppose about me? What is something that they assume about Roger Hernandez? So the thing that they assume is that I fly, So they're not trying to convince me to fly. They're trying to convince me that when I fly, please choose Delta. You following what I'm saying? Now, what would happen if I, Roger Hernandez, did not fly, hated airports, have had a bad experiences in airports, married somebody who was an airport person and got divorced and had a really bad experience with that person? How inclined would I have been to look at their advertisement? Why not? Because I don't fly. So this is how our evangelism is set up, right? Our evangelism is set up in a way like when it was first set up, 1850s and beyond. It's like, here's all these people that fly. They're all Christians and Methodists and Baptists. They all fly. So I'm going to show you how Delta Adventism is better than United Catholicism. So I'm moving you from this airline to this airline because this is a better airline. Don't you agree that Delta is better than United, right? Won't you agree? If you don't think so, just agree. This is better. This is better. But what happens in that strategy falls apart when there's no people, or when there's an ever increasing number of people that say, I don't want to fly, I'd rather drive. Not only do I not want to fly, I'm prejudiced towards flyers and flying people and airports. Too much drama, too much problems. I don't want to do any of that. So if I continue to send flyers to people that don't fly about switching to my airline, number one, I'm just going to make them mad. Because like, why do you assume that I'm flying? Why do you want to convince me to join Delta if I don't fly? So what would be the first step? I need to back it up. And it's going to be a harder job, but a necessary one. What's my job as Delta now? Not to convince to switch airlines, but convince them that flying is a good option. That flying is not what it's cracked up to be. And who are the best advertisers of flying? Flyers. But 83%, 78 to 83%, one of those two, but it's really high. 78 to 83% of non-Christians said they had 0 Christians as close friends. So if flyers are the best ones to influence other people to fly, but nobody's relating to the flyers and the non-flyers, then we're just going to pass like ships in the night. So we have to back it up and say, all right, how do I engage you? Okay, how do I engage you so you see that flyers are not weird people and that we are, Jesus wants us to be different but not weird, and that connection happens. Now, the same thing I did trying to connect with a frequent flyer program is what people are doing right now in your community. Before they join or try to go to your church, number one, they're going to check you out online. So how's your website? Like the majority of websites, Adventist websites, like if the 1990s ever came back, we would be like really ready for it. Because I just looked at a website today of a church in Carolina where I know the pastor and, we're buddies. And I looked at his website today, and the website had the name listed of a previous pastor. So they're going to check you out online. What's the most important thing? If you have a website, it's not that difficult to create a good online presence. So what should be, we're talking about compassionate evangelism, what are the main basics that a website should have? What are the three things that it should have? Number one, where are we? Number two, when do we meet? And number three, how do you get a hold of us? So people are checking you out online before they check you out in person. So if I look at websites, there's pictures of pathfinders. Pathfinders has no meaning for guests. So you have to understand, is what we do for us or for them? Is what we do so we can feel good about ourselves or so we can reach people for Christ? Because if it is, you have to ask yourself, is what we do and how we do it the best way to reach lost people? Is what we do and how we do it the best way to reach lost people? Is what we do and how we do it, every single ministry of the church, every single department, every single program has to be filtered through those two questions. Is what we do and how we do it the best way to reach lost people? See, we have to understand that church does not exist for us. It's the only organization that does not exist for its members. Church it's not about me. It's about the people that need Christ. So if somebody's going to check out my website, I went to a church and the pastor invited me to preach. So I get there on Friday night to the city, and I looked online, and it said first service 8:30, second service 11:30. So I'm like, okay, first service 8:30, second service 11:30, and it's right there on the website. So there's no place in the front of the website. The more clicks somebody has to click, the more disconnection you have. And understand that social media and media in general is never neutral. It's not neutral. A website is not neutral. It works for you or against you. It's not like paper advertisement is neutral because you leave it on the bench and people see it, throw it in the trash. But something that you have posted online always works against you or for you. So how is your media presence working for you or against you? I called my pastor friend. There's nothing in the front that says where they are. All it has is times. And I called him and I said, hey, I see 8:30 is the first service. What time do I need to be there? He said, no. We only have two services once a month. And tomorrow we don't have it. Imagine I'm a guest, right? And I'm visiting that city. This is not a 30-member church. This is an 800-member church. I'm in that city. And I looked online and I see, it's 8:30. And I show up and I'm a guest. And I show up at 8:30. Who's going to be there? Not even the deacons. Nobody. So I'm checking it out. If I'm going to check out a church, first thing I do is check out your church. Now, if you have a social media page, whether you have Facebook or Twitter, Instagram, whatever it is, if you have a social media page, most churches have Facebook. How many of your churches have some type of social media presence? Raise your hand. How many of your churches have nothing? Zero. How many of you are not sure? You don't really. Okay. So here's a good tip, right? If you want to be on, of course, remember, in the back of your mind, you have to always understand that nuns are prejudiced towards your church. So here's a big mistake. Write this down, tweet it to your pastor, text it to him, send it to him in an email, write it down and give it to him in a piece of paper, or her, whoever your pastor is. Here's a big mistake that churches make. When they have social media presence, they post a lot of pictures and and everything in the social media page is about events that you're having that you want people to come to. So imagine watching the Super Bowl. Any football fans here? I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan, so you know I'm next level, right? So imagine watching a Super Bowl, and all you see for 3 hours is advertisement. Imagine you're watching This Is Us, right? And all you see for an hour is advertisement. Imagine you going to your friend's house, right? And he puts on a movie, and before the movie there's some clips from other. That's all you see, just clips and advertisement. How would you feel? So social media pages are always filled with, this is our Pathfinders marching, and this is the worship service, and this is the music that we did, and this is. So churches that are reaching their community average 50% of this is what we do, and 50% this is how we're serving. So understand that a nun is already prejudiced towards your church. So they don't like the high sales pitch, and that's how it feels. It's like, we're needy. Like, come to my event. Okay, we're going to have something. Come, please, please, please come. Please come. Nobody likes needy people. Please, 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 So if you have a social media page and you're posting, for example, there's a church in Atlanta. There's a church in Atlanta that they were building a church. And when you're building a church, there's a big sign outside that usually says future home. Have you seen those? It says future home of Atlanta Seventh-day Adventist Church. So this church said, don't put future home of church. Just put hashtag. Everybody know what a hashtag is? Hashtag is a Gwinnett County. That's a county. Hashtag for Gwinnett. That's a big sign that they put. So when people drove by, they said for Gwinnett, and they went on Twitter, and they noticed that this was attached to a religious organization. So what's behind it? They said mostly Christians are known, partly our fault, many times it's not our fault. We're known for the things we oppose. Like, I'm against drinking. I'm against gay marriage. I'm against smoking. I'm against drugs. I'm against promiscuity. I'm against violence. I'm against. So we're always, every time you see a portrayal of a Christian, we're always saying the things we are against. Is there a time for that? Absolutely. But there are things we are for. We are for health. We are for hope. We are for healing. We are for families. We are for good parenting. We are for good health. So instead of just presenting the negative of everything, how about we present the positive? This is the things we're for. So in Gwinnett County, which is where I live, they made T-shirts that said hashtag for Gwinnett. Took out a billboard that said hashtag for Gwinnett, and they started touching people. Going next to the church, there's a donut shop, and the lady does not attend any church. And they said, "How's it going?" So the pastor went with a couple of the members, like, "How's it going?" They said, "What's your most difficult month in sales?" They said, "Oh, July. July is the worst month. Nobody comes to buy donuts. Wintertime is great because people come and buy donuts, but July, the worst. People are on vacation. People want to eat ice cream. They don't want to eat donuts." And it's like, sometimes I even think about closing the shop in July because my earnings come way down and I have to pay my employees. It's like really bad month. So they went online and posted in their website. It said, for Gwinnett, said, "Come support this donut shop." And July was the highest month in sales. Right? That person was invited to church. You think she had an interest in coming to church? Why? Because the prejudice that exists against the church was broken down because of service. Right? I'm breaking the prejudice that exists. Like, we're interested in you. What is going on with you? What's happening with you? So that first starts online. Second thing I did is I asked my friends, like, what's your experience? If I don't have any friends that fly, my experience is going to be skewed. That's why it's beholden on us to make friends. And the third one is I experience it for myself. So you have to ask in your worship service, is what we do and how we do it the best way to reach lost people? Is the time we start the best way to reach lost people? Is the music we sing the best way to reach lost people? Is the order of worship? Are there things that we can eliminate from the order of worship? Do we have to stand? Is this like an aerobics class that we have to stand and sit 50 times? Why do we do that? The things that don't make sense. Language we use that makes no sense to an unbeliever. Right? Things we say from the platform, like hasten the steps. Lord, hasten the steps of the ones who are on their way. What does that mean in real life? How is somebody is somebody walking? Does he get like an angel pushing him? Does he? What does that even mean? People say things from the front, like today in AY we're gonna go to the ABC and the camp meeting. Is all this insider language and verbiage that only we understand. I was sitting in a church, and this happens to me because I'm in a different church every weekend. What's up with announcements? Like, do we need 50 announcements? I don't think so. It's in the bulletin. People don't come to church to listen to the next car wash. They do not. They come to encounter God. So I want to remove all the barriers. Everything short of sin, I'm going to remove the barriers. I'm going to make the worship service as compact and as intentional as I can. I'm going to have people up there that are happy to be alive, people that were not baptized in vinegar, people that are going to greet people with a happy face. I want to have, because people are going to check it out. So after they see you on the website, right? And they see, okay, this is where they meet, this is a church. And by the way, you don't have to be a mega church to be an excellent church. In fact, there are people that prefer the intimacy of a small church. But you do need to do things with excellence and intentionality. Not like, well, we start when we get there and we finish when we're done. It's like whatever. And so you always have to have in the back of your mind, God might send us today somebody who needs him. So is how we have structured everything the most conducive way to reach people for Christ. There was a church of 25 people. It had dwindled out to 25. That invited me to give a seminar on how to. They had no idea why they were losing members. They had no idea. They said, we don't know. We're a friendly church. We don't know what the problem is. We used to be 150. Now we're 25. So I went there on a Friday night, and then I talked to a young adult, and I said, this is what I want you to do. I'm going to give you a gift card as compensation. I want you to show up tomorrow at this address, and give him the church's address. And I want you to just dress like a heathen, right? She was happy to oblige, right? She was just dress like a heathen, and don't tell people you know me. Just show up like you were a guest. And then we're going to have a little survey at the end that you're going to tell me how you felt. So I'm teaching, and she shows up. Sign is partially covered by brush. Paint is peeling in the sign. The name of the pastor is the pastor that was there 2 pastors ago. There's nobody at the door to greet her. She comes in and sits in the back by herself. Nobody moves from their seat to come and say, hi, how are you? Are you new here? I mean, it's 25 people. How can you miss? kind of hard to miss a guest. So she's by herself there. Nobody comes to say hi, except for the one weird guy. Every church has the one weird guy, right? Every church. So this one weird guy comes to her and says, hi, we're going to have a hymn sing, and we want to know what's your favorite hymn. And she's like, I don't know. I'm a guest. No, pick one. Here's a hymnal. Pick a hymn. And she would not leave. He would not leave, right? and then it would be funny if it wasn't true, right? It was like this actual. I'm sitting in the front, and then I start preaching. And when I'm preaching, it's been an hour, right? It's been an hour of announcements, and just like, what song should we sing? Who has a favorite? You? What's the favorite? 353. I don't know that one. What other one? So it's just like that's why I believe that the Seventh-day Adventist Church is God's remnant church. I believe it. Because we do everything we can to kick people out and people still get baptized. It's like, I believe we do everything imaginable to send blocks and roadblocks and walls and hoops to jump through and language to understand. And she's sitting by herself. It's been an hour already. Nobody's ever, except for the weird guy. And I start preaching, and I start telling the people, it would be a shame if a visitor came to this church and nobody greeted her. Amen, Pastor. It would be a shame if nobody sat next to them and made them feel at home. It would be a shame, Pastor. And I'm looking at her, and people 2 pews in front of her like, amen, say it. And I'm like, my goodness. So at the end of service, we go down, and then when we met with the board, we're like, you have no idea where you're not growing? But here's exhibit 1. See, if you're not ready for guests, why would God bring you some? Right? It's like this. If the church culture you have is toxic, why would God bring people that are trying to live toxic lives to come into a toxic mixio culture? It's, the way I illustrated this morning in a meeting I had with the pastors is this. Imagine you have a steak. I know all of us are vegetarians, right? But you have a steak. It's a big steak, and there's a plate that the steak is in. And they bring it to your table, and you look at the steak, and it smells really good. And then right next to the steak, there are rat droppings. What happened to the steak the moment you see the rat droppings? It devalues it. Right? So the steak is your vision, your mission, the things you put in your bulletin. This church exists for, all of you have a vision and a mission in your church. I know it because you guys come from really good churches. I can see you guys are like come from excellent churches. You have a vision in your church. Our church exists for reaching the world, telling people about Jesus. This is the vision statement, the mission statement, right? This is what we exist. That's the stake. This is what we're here for. And then the plate is a church culture. How do we treat each other? How do we treat new people? How do we treat unbelievers? Like that lady that came on the opening night of an evangelistic series and went to the guests and said, I am so happy you're here. Thank you for coming. I know this is your first time. I just want to let you know that if you're going to be a member here, you're going to stop drinking milk. Because milk is bad for you and you should stop. Opening night. You know how many times she came back? It was never. Because it's like, so the church culture is the plate. So my job is to try to have a presentable message that unbelievers, when they come in, understand. There's the 3 things that somebody comes. They're already prejudiced, so they're going to check me out. When they look for me online in the Kernersville or the Charlotte or the Asheville church, whatever church, they're going to look for me online. And when they look for me online, they're going to see that 50% of my posts are about stuff that we do at church, but 50% of my posts is about helping the homeless and doing the 5 H's and doing the human trafficking. So like, maybe this church is not like other churches, because most churches only care about money and only care about themselves. But this church is different. This church care, and so they don't care, right? Unbelievers don't care whether you're 50 or 50,000. They just want to know what kind of culture that church is. I have mess in my life. I'm trying to leave an abusive relationship. I have issues with my kid. Whatever things drove them to church that day, they should find peace in the church. Not gossip. Love, not judgment. Hope, not fear. So, let's do a little exercise. Imagine you move into a city. So we're going to divide in groups of 5. Imagine you live in a city, and the city is going to be Charlotte. So you move into Charlotte. I know nobody wants to live there, but let's just imagine for a moment. You move to Charlotte, all right? So in your group, we need to have in every group somebody who's computer savvy. In other words, somebody who has a smartphone that can navigate the internet. So we want to have at least one of them in every group. So I want you to pick from these 5 H's. I want you to pick either hunger, human trafficking, homelessness, health, and help. And what I want you to do is I want you to do a little research on what organizations in Charlotte deal with the one that you picked. So don't pick 5 of them, just pick one. So if you pick homelessness, what organizations in Charlotte, so do a Google search. Google is our friend. Do a Google search, what organizations, and look and see who the leader or the contact information for that organization is. All right? Here's a couple of principles, and then I'll let you do that, and then we'll have a report. Here's a couple of principles that if you're going to be compassionate evangelist, this is what you do. This sign is greater than, right? As it relates to community service and compassion, joining an existing organization is better than starting your own. Many times we want to advertise every organization. We get so excited about the 5 H's. You're going to say, we're going to start 5 new ministries. There's like 50 of you in your church. And of those 50, like 20 can't drive at night, right? The other 30 have some type of like work, and you end up having like 5 volunteers. It's much easier. Jesus called us to be salt and light. Did he not? Right. Did he not call us to be salt and light? Yeah. So if there is an organization in Charlotte, this is the city that we're choosing, an organization in Charlotte that deals with homeless people, instead of us trying to establish a new ministry of homelessness, why don't we look for that organization and infiltrate that organization, join that organization, and be salt and light in that organization? They already have a platform. Now you can access it. They do the hard work. This is what I mean. When I do evangelism, every night of the evangelistic series, I bring in one of these 5 H's that deal with one of these. We just did one in Triad. We did one in Charlotte. And what usually happens, for example, there was in Tampa, Florida, there was a Muslim leader who dealt with homelessness. And he's a Muslim doctor. Right, Kathy? What was the organization? Was it health that the Muslim doctor did? What was in Tampa, in Light Spring. But he led, I believe it was health. So he led a health organization that helped. He was Muslim. The organization was not Muslim, but he was Muslim. The organization helped underprivileged kids. So we invited him to come and he talked about what the organization does, helping underprivileged kids, and we collected an offering and we gave it to them. And what happened there is that he came, he made a 5-minute presentation, and he stayed for the meeting. And he listened to the message of the Sabbath. We had another pastor who closed down his church and brought all his people so they can listen because they had connections with Florida Hospital. This is a Pentecostal pastor who closed his church down so he can come. Why? Because we're not trying to advertise everything. We're trying to be salt and light in the world, right? So as long as the principles are compatible to our beliefs, it's better. You understand? Are you following what I'm saying? It's better to join than to start. Along the same lines, it's better to do one community outreach program good than have 3 or 4 that are not staffed well, that don't go right, that you have to cajole people so they can come. Second principle, go is better than come. Used to be, come to my church so I can serve you. The new one is, let me go to where you're at. Let me go to your neighborhood. Let me go to your house. Let me go to your job. Let me go to where you're at. Let me rent a community service center at your apartment complex and give a depression seminar there versus you come to my church, right? Because people, when you say church, immediately have some barriers. So go is better than come, right? And sustainable is better than drive-by. Usually drive-by compassion is Christmas and Thanksgiving. We drive by, we give a bunch of boxes. It's like, God bless you, see you next year. That's called drive-by compassion. Sustained compassion is like, I'm going to invest in this community in a sustained manner, right? It's like running a marathon versus running 100 yards, right? This morning I went running with my wife, and she likes to run fast, but then she stops. And I like to run slow for a longer period of time. Nothing is wrong or right about that. You know, I'm probably right, but it's better. It's better. The sustainable thing, right? Sustainable. So it's really hard in a church of 100 to sustain 7 ministries. Just because somebody else is doing it doesn't mean you need to do it. Following what I'm saying? All right. So groups of 5. No problem. You influence. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we are, in the things that we share, we collaborate. In the things that we don't share, we maintain our individuality. Like, right? In the last churches that I was at, there was an issue with gang violence. And the Catholic Church had an initiative of painting where gangs tagged, and we joined them and we painted over it. In fact, the Catholic priest, we had a meeting in our church, and the Catholic priest came to our church and looked at our church and said, well, oh wow, this is where all my members are coming. Because we're not, we're not afraid of joining organizations to serve. In fact, we can influence them for good. Yeah, I think that sometimes, like, older people get a bad rap, but I see older people with iPhones. So age has nothing to do with embracing new technologies. No. But usually when I have conversations, people say, "Well, the old people in my church, or these young people today." I think that you always work with the best way to do it is you always work with the ones who want to. and you inspire versus trying to convince people. So you lose time trying to convince people. That some of them are never going to be convinced. So Jesus picked 12, right? And he had a great multitude, and from that great multitude there were 70, and then from the 70 he had 12, and from the 12 he had 3. So you start smart and inspire people. And I believe that when we service is inspirational. So when we inspire people, other people are going to say, "Man, that could be me." Versus trying to, if we want everybody to get on board, the train will never leave the station. Let's just do it with the ones that want to, and serve with and don't get caught up in that. Well, if nobody wants to do it, nobody wants to help. Well, there's some that want to help. Have you asked them? Questions. I was about to do some breakouts, but the questions are coming fast and furious. Come on. Uh-huh. That is an absolutely important question. And one that happens more than you would know. I think that the way we cannot eliminate that, because people are free to go and join whatever they want, right? But it's easier to control when there is a systems in place that people that volunteer from the church can go through, and then they're assigned places according to their gifting. Versus just like, hey, go serve, just join somewhere. So we screen the organizations and we bring them to us, and then we screen our volunteers and we connect it with them. So like the church is like the broker. But that does not eliminate the risk factor of, because sometimes the weirder people are more willing than the normal people. Like, yeah, me. I'm like, no. Anybody else? Yes. No, yeah, yes, you. Yeah, yeah, that's right. No, I think most organizations have generic names. That is homeless ministry. But what is the alternative? Like, what are we doing right now? My fear is that the fear is driving us not to do anything. And at the end of the day, the most important thing is not for me to have my name recognized, but for the person to be fed. So when the person is fed, they're going to be thankful for the person who fed them. That's why it's not drive-by, right? So if I'm constantly coming to serve you, eventually you're going to ask me, so why are you doing this? And then that's when it opens up to conversations, because I volunteer on a regular basis. They see me there all the time. They start opening up to me, right? And finally, they're like, oh, okay. This divisions that we and the fears that we have in our mind don't exist in the people we're trying to serve. They're just wondering, like, when is my next meal coming from? Like, how can I get out from this person who's pimping me? So, I have diabetes. Can somebody help me? And then from there, it's a platform. I'm not saying you should never do stuff in your church. There are times that is completely appropriate. But increasingly, resistance to a church is increasing. So instead of asking them always, come to us, let's go take the health fair to the neighborhood. Let's go take the health fair to the community service center in the apartment. Let's give the 12-step program where they live. And then from there, you break down barriers. And they say, well, those people help. Who are you guys again? Oh, we're Seventh-day Adventists. So that's a lot of good press because news get involved. Interviews come in. It's a lot of good press. Yes. That's fantastic. 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 I found that to be consistently replicated everywhere. I had a we were serving with a church. They were it's a weird denomination that they laughed and stuff when they were in the spirit. It's crazy. And they had a ministry to homeless. And then the pastor said, "You guys want to come?" So we went, and they started asking questions. So what do you guys believe? So what makes you different? It's amazing. I have shared the doctrine of hell with the assistant editor of Christianity Today. And I sat in his office, and he said, "You know what? I can't say publicly, but that's exactly what I believe." I would have never been able to share my faith with the assistant editor of Christianity Today if I had kept to myself. And I only have Adventist pastors who are my friends, and I only go to Adventist events, and I only read Adventist literature, and I only associate with Adventist people. Adventists are already going to heaven. I'm trying to get other people to go to heaven too. Right? So I don't sacrifice my beliefs and my convictions, but I need to interact with people so I can share the beautiful truths that we have. It's like, they made a survey in North America, 67% of people don't know that we exist. Like, how are they going to persecute you if they don't know you exist? Like I know we had to persecute somebody, but who is it? Where are they at? Because we keep for ourselves. It's FUBU. It's FUBU. Camp meetings originally were not meant for us. Camp meetings were meant as an evangelistic strategy to preach the gospel to people so people could come, and there were baptisms and mass baptisms. So this insular mentality was just us for us. Now, do we have to be careful? Yeah, I'm not going to join pedophiles anonymous that are going to go and feed the homeless. It's not consistent with my worldview. So there are limits, of course. So we have 10 minutes. We're going to have to leave our exercise for tomorrow. So we'll do that tomorrow. We'll continue answering questions. Glenn, and then over here. Yes. Correct. The, correct. Here's this just happened to me 2 days ago. I was talking to a pastor who said he was very weary, um, because I talked about this, and he was very weary of, connecting with other churches and and doing service. Um, but he said what changed my mind was this: he had a member in his church who was a lady that her husband was very sick and died, and she found herself grieving intensely. So she asked her pastor, are there any Adventist materials on grieving? And he was looking for materials like a 12-step program for grieving, and he could not find something for her. So she went to a local Christian bookstore and found a really good resource on grieving. Who was not done by an Adventist, but is a biblically based and very good. And she went through it, and it did amazing in her. So she told the pastor, I would like to start. There are other widows in our community. There's other people that are grieving. I want to start a grieving ministry. And they do the grieving ministry in the church. They had, in the last one, they had 12 people, all of them from the community. She's the only Adventist. It's at the Adventist church. There was one lesson that talks about heaven, and they give a disclaimer and gives them an opportunity to explain the biblical and lead them to evangelism. And after that, he was like, "Yeah, I'm convinced." At the end of the day, for me, it's like I have really good family members who are far from Christ. My brother, for example, is far from Christ. He was in the Marines for 20 years. He's one of those angry atheists. But last year, he asked me, I see that you post that you kids go on mission trips. I believe every person under 18 should go on a mission trip at least one time. Does wonders. It helps the people we serve and the people we serve with. Conversions happen in mission trips. Hardened atheists get converted in mission trips when they serve with other Christians. And he's like, he has kids now. And he's angry atheist. He has kids now. He's like, how do you send your kids to, where do you send your kids on a mission trip? What? So it's much easier to invite people to come and serve with you than it is to straight up say, hey, come to my church. I don't want anything to do with church. We're going to have a march against domestic violence. All the churches in Atlanta got together and had a march against domestic violence. There was a lady that came who was a domestic violence victim, all survivor. We had a huge crowd of Adventists. We marched. We walked around the block, and she came up to the stage. We prayed for her. She had no idea this was going to happen. We prayed for her. There was a radio station that from the community that was recording everything. And she came up to the stage. We prayed for her. And after we prayed for her, we said, we have something for you. And among the pastors and the churches, we had purchased a car. So we said, we know you have she had left a 17-year abuse relationship. And she had 3 kids. She had a job, but not very good means of transportation. So we gave her a car. It's immediate breaking down of barriers. So why do you do that? That's the question. Why do you do that? Why do you do this for me? Because nobody does that. Why do you care so much? We just want to show God's love in practical ways. So you serve until they ask why. And then we introduce this beautiful message that we have. So it's not about minimizing our message. It's about maximizing our opportunities. I had one last question here, and tomorrow we'll do this. So if you're an introvert, don't miss tomorrow because we're going to do this, and it's going to be fun. Remember, there are in no city in the world, there are no statues to committees. It's all about the doers. All right? If you wait for everybody to get on board, the train will never leave the station. If you listen to the loudest voices, you'll miss the most important ones. And it's just, I'm committed to this for the long haul. The reason we adopted 2 kids with my wife and they came as foster kids is because we knew we could not save every kid, but we could save 2. And we say it's a commitment of love, and it gives us access to a whole underworld of human trafficking and how that happens and abuse. And it opened our eyes because we had sheltered lives. And the longer you are in the church, the more sheltered you are, because it's evil is real and it's present and it's damaging. So we can't save everybody, but we can save somebody. All right? Last question, then we're out. I think that there are people that are not comfortable with certain things, and my personal belief, I'm not trying to push you outside your comfort zone. But for example, there's an event or a parade or whatever, and we go and hand out water. To people that are it's July the 4th, and we're gonna go and hand out water. Immediately, we're in a service connection. So they see, and the bottled waters have the name of the church. So we're in a service. Some people don't feel comfortable like doing like house renovations on Sabbath. They'd rather do that on Sunday. That's perfectly fine, right? There's different service activities that we can do. The question is not what we do as much as, okay, if you're not comfortable cleaning somebody's yard on Sabbath, do it on Sunday, but do it. Don't just sit back and say, I can't believe you guys cleaned the yard on Saturday, but you didn't do anything. No. Like, what are you doing? Come up with something that you can serve that's outside the 4 walls. The church needs to leave the building. All right? Thank you. See you tomorrow. God bless you.